If you're a loan officer listening to this episode, I want you to lean in for a moment because this episode is for you as much as it is for your executive management team. I hear this from time to time. I lost another deal last month because we don't offer renovation loans. I could close more loans each year if I had access to reno loans. My last company offered renovation loans. I don't know why we don't, yada, yada, yada. And because enough loan officers express some version of these thoughts, leadership listens. They want to be responsive, they want to support production, so they say yes. And they roll out a renovation program, and then nothing happens. The loan officers who asked for it don't use it. The volume never materializes, the platform bleeds money, and renovation lending gets labeled too complicated, too risky, a liability. But here's the truth no one wants to say out loud. Renovation lending doesn't fail because the loans are bad. It fails because platforms are built on assumptions instead of commitments. Lenders, executive management teams, before a single investor conversation, before a single guideline is written, a single dollar is spent, here's what I recommend. Survey your loan officers, not casually, not informally, not, hey, who's interested, but ask very specific, measurable questions. How many renovation opportunities have you personally turned away in the past month, in the past year? If you previously worked for a lender offering renovation loans, how many units did you personally close and over what period of time? What specific steps will you take to market these loans? How many units do you realistically expect to originate in the first 30 days, in the first 90 days, 6 months, 1 year after rollout? These are the kind of questions you need to be asking your loan officers. And here's the key part. Document those answers, because what you're really doing is this. You're gauging real demand, you're identifying serious originators, and planting the seeds for commitment and accountability. Far too often, a lender hears complaints about a deal here or there that couldn't be done, invests heavily in a renovation platform, and then the very loan officers who pushed for it never write a single renovation loan. See it all the time. If loan officers want access to these programs, then they need to make the commitment to the lenders they work for. And once the program launches, they need to be held accountable for the commitments they made. We don't want renovation loans added to your product mix to be an exercise in futility. So for loan officers out there who are listening, I want you to consider that adding any loan program to a product mix, it takes work. And adding a renovation loan takes exponentially more work. It's not as easy as throwing together a guideline summary, some product pages, or creating a few marketing pieces and then announcing the rollout on a sales call. That is how renovation platforms fail before they even begin. Back to leadership. After you've gauged interest, then you need to answer a foundational question. Are we going to sell to one investor, to multiple investors? Are we going to retain loans and sell direct? Would be harder to do, by the way, if you don't have draw administration experience, so it might not even be an option. And obviously, agencies and investors, they're going to want proof that you understand the risk, you can manage the draws. If you have to do that, you have experienced staff in place. Loan officers focus on price. Leadership cannot. There's too much at stake. So it's not just about price. It's going to be about other things as well. Overlay, for example. So you're going to want to understand, if you're selling to an investor, who's going to manage the draws, you or the investor. If it's the investor, how efficient and accurate is that process? What's their process look like? How quickly do they disperse draws? Because nothing can destroy your progress and, more importantly, your credibility in the field faster than deals that can't close because of excessive overlay, or contractors and consultants who are very upset about complicated, lengthy draw disbursements. So keep in mind, as with most things, you get what you pay for. Even if they are the best, relying on the cheapest investor can backfire, especially if they're priced significantly better in the market. Because if they refuse to purchase one of your loans for some reason or other, you're going to be forced to take a loss selling to another investor or selling direct. So be real careful of falling into that trap, which leads me to another matter. Whatever the takeout strategy that you choose, you must have a backup. I have seen lenders build beautiful, well thought out platforms only to watch their entire renovation pipeline come to a screeching halt because an investor abruptly exited the space with little or no notice. So now you're committed, you're building the infrastructure. This is when the real work begins. There are a variety of things that you're going to have to do, of course, when you add any loan program. So for renovation loans, let me give you just a few ideas of what this is going to include or involve. in-house product pages. There will be some LOS customization, which is not simple for renovation or, for that matter, construction loans. And so here's a tip. Most LOSs require you structure a renovation loan one way to price the loan and run AUS, and then another way to compliantly disclose. So you're constantly having to flip back and forth unless you can solve for that. Then you got to work on pricing engine configuration and doc packages, reviewing and validating those, because many doc vendors, they get their renovation disclosures wrong. You cannot blindly rely on them. You need to create centralized access to renovation documents and disclosures and job aids for every role, and contractor approval workflows, which personally, I think ideally live online, an online portal for the contractors to use. You might even think about customizing some new pre-approval letters, automating borrower emails, explaining the renovation process and what happens after closing and how the draws work. It's not glamorous work, but it builds a strong foundation. Next, you want to identify support staff and secure their buy-in. Every role in the fulfillment chain matters, from disclosure desk personnel, processors, underwriters, closers, post-closers, shippers, draw administrators. And before you just arbitrarily assign them to working on renovation loans, it is essential to get their buy-in. We talked about this in episode 2, I believe. Commitment is an optional. Renovation lending must start at the top. So I'm not going to rehash it, but I will say this. If your support staff views renovation loans as extra work, you're already in trouble. And processing, in my opinion, is the single most important role in this renovation loan fulfillment assembly line. The success or failure of your renovation lending platform, it can hinge on loan processing. And if you've assigned processors to work on these loans who have zero interest in doing them, who show resistance or even resentment in being asked to take on this extra task, you're going to have a problem brewing before you even begin. Here's another critical mistake I see over and over again: delegating reno processing to your weakest processors on staff. Lenders are oftentimes tempted to do this because their top-tier processors are just too busy. But this, in my opinion, is a huge mistake. These loans, they're too complex, they're too nuanced, too risky. You want your top talent on these loans. Trust me, it's going to save the company a ton of time in the end. And ideally, you want them to embrace the challenge, not resentment. Here's another suggestion. Instead of training everyone, I recommend training 2 people per role. So 2 people in the disclosure desk, 2 processors, 2 underwriters, and so on. Why? Platform stability. I am never a fan of the single thread of operations. You're going to find reno loans clogging up the assembly line if you lose your only reno resource. I've seen it happen time and again. It will not be pretty. And too often, this is the thing that leads to shutting down the reno production, the reno arm altogether. You cannot have one person on staff who's solely responsible for any portion of renovation loan fulfillment. Second, nurturing talent. Initially, renovation volume is going to be pretty low. That's the reality. And if you train everyone, they're going to forget what they've learned before they've even had the opportunity to put that new knowledge to use. Pushing all renovation loans through the same small group of people first, it allows them to gain experience. And then later, when your renovation volume builds or increases, you can train more people to scale. Here's another thing I recommend. Train your staff based on their role, the part that they play in renovation loan fulfillment, not program guidelines. Anyone can slap together a PowerPoint presentation full of renovation loan guidelines. That's not training. I prefer to take a different approach. When I train, I require reading the product pages as a prerequisite before the training session. And the training, again, it should be role specific. This is not all inclusive, but I'll give you a few examples. Disclosure desk personnel, they need to be trained on how to read a 203K calculator or a maximum mortgage worksheet, and then use that data to structure loans in the LOS, making sure that the proper disclosures are in the disclosure packages. Lock desks, they probably need to be trained on workarounds to get the pricing to fire correctly. Processors, they need to learn how to obtain and review and assemble renovation packages. Underwriters need to learn how to review renovation documents and condition loans appropriately. Let me pause there for a moment and talk about that with processors and underwriters. I'm not talking about program guidelines. I'm talking about, here is an example of a bid. This is how you read a bid. Here is an example of a work write-up. This is how you read the work write-up. This is how you compare the two. And either for processors, request revisions, or for underwriters to condition appropriately. Those are the kinds of things that you want your team to learn during training. closers and post-closers. They need to become familiar with renovation-specific docs and delivery nuances. And if you're managing the draws internally, then that team's going to have to be trained or hired. But for many lenders, I think outsourcing draw admin, at least in the beginning, is going to be the right move. And it's only after support staff is trained that I recommend training sales. And sales training, again, it's not about loan guidelines. It's about best practices, things that you can't pick up when you're reading product pages. Things like identifying renovation opportunities, how to start conversations, how to overcome objections, setting the right expectations with borrowers, with contractors, with real estate agents, completing 203K calculators and maximum mortgage worksheets, structuring loans correctly in the LOS so that they can price the loans properly and run AUS. Those are the things, again, you can't learn from product pages. That is the crux of good training. And the training's not enough. Of course, they should get training. All of these players should get training, but they should also get step-by-step job aids, walking them through each step of the process. That way, if you lose one person who's overseeing your renovation lending platform, anyone and everyone can still do their job. I want to talk about certification. Some lenders require certification to originate renovation loans. And in theory, that sounds great. I used to be a fan of it. In practice, I've not seen it make a meaningful difference long term. No one enjoys training, let's be honest, and they like taking exams even less. What I see loan officers doing, multitasking through the training, then IMing questions, asking for help passing the exams, or they consult the product pages just to get a passing grade, then they Google the answers, or they guess at the answers and retake exams until they pass. Instead of certification, I'm going to recommend one-on-one coaching. It is a much, much better approach. It's hard to scale, but it works. And so here's how I do it. I identify loan originators who are genuinely interested in learning about renovation loans, and they're passionate about the difference that these loans can make. Coach those loan officers on how to identify renovation lending opportunities, plan their approach and execute it, and then walk them through their first few deals, hands-on. Hold their hands till they gain confidence. That's how to build renovation volume. In fact, I recently took this approach with a couple of new loan officers, and both of them, within weeks for one, within a couple months for the other, they had renovation loans in the pipeline. Loans, plural, not just one. Now let's move on to marketing and measuring quality control. Once the training is complete, then open up access to marketing materials. I won't go into marketing tactics here, but there are so many ways to market these loans, so many advantages over traditional loans. Of course, I'm biased, but in my experience, you will have no shortage of opportunity to market these. And so here's a tip. Focus on story selling. These loans yield the most compelling stories, and those stories are marketing gold. And once renovation volume starts rolling in, don't forget to measure your success. Begin with proper pipeline reporting. I prefer, this is just me, a daily report of all new renovation leads so I can proactively reach out to loan officers and offer to help setting expectations with all the parties and offer to help structuring the loans. If you've elected to do the certification for loan officers, then you'll need to implement measures to make sure that only your certified loan officers are taking renovation loan applications. I also like a daily report of all the active renovation loans in the pipeline so I can manage that pipeline and make sure loans are running smoothly through the assembly line. I kind of do that from a mile-high view, get involved when I need to. And I like as-needed reports for closings, which will prompt me to board new projects for draw admin. So if you're doing that in-house, that could be important as well. And don't forget to track your fallout and your escalations. You want to do that because if you find that a certain loan officer has a high fallout ratio, or if loans tied to a specific contractor are more likely to incur borrower complaints, or maybe you've got loans that are assigned to certain consultants that tend to take longer to close, these could present good coaching opportunities or reveal a need to proceed with caution when a certain contractor's been hired, or possibly even blacklist a consultant. So don't forget to track your fallout and your escalations. And then don't forget the importance of quality control audits. I don't see many lenders implementing this, and I think that's a missed opportunity. Be sure to audit your renovation loans routinely because those audits, they can reveal gaps in production, and managers can use that feedback as training opportunities. It sounds simple and intuitive, but I often see that piece skipped or missed. And this is the measurement that's going to prevent future issues with loan delivery, loan sale, prevents repurchases. I would not underestimate the importance of QC audits. I also recommend implementing surveys. You can survey borrowers, real estate agents, 203K consultants, contractors, send those surveys out after loan closing, and then do it again after the renovation projects have been completed. And don't forget to survey your internal staff too. That's going to help you gauge their comfort level with these loans, where they feel they're the weakest, what's working, what's not working, and what suggestions they have for improvements. That's all very, very valuable information for your organization. And one more tip, you're going to need to maintain a contractor database and track consultant performance. It's required for 203K loans, highly recommended for other renovation loans. Implementing all these steps that we've talked about, it's going to prevent delivery or investor issues and avoid loan repurchases. Very, very important. As we wrap up this episode, I want to say renovation lending is not difficult, but it is demanding. It's going to require intention, commitment, structure, accountability. And I want to leave you with something to think about. Not a how-to, not a checklist to download, just a moment of honest reflection. Renovation lending has a way of revealing things about an organization, whether commitment exists beyond the sales floor, whether leadership is building something durable or reacting to pressure. It exposes whether infrastructure exists or people are compensating with effort, whether accountability is shared or quietly avoided. It'll expose performance issues with support staff. And here's the part that matters most. If renovation lending, it feels chaotic or frustrating or risky inside your company, the loans aren't the problem, the platform is. When built intentionally, renovation lending can become one of the most powerful and defensible offerings a lender can have. When it's built casually, it becomes expensive, exhausting, and all too often short-lived. So as you head back to your desk or your next appointment or the rest of your commute, ask yourself, are we building renovation lending because we're ready or because someone asked? Because those two pathways will look very different a year from now. In the next episode, we'll briefly talk about the differences between selling to investors or selling direct. Thanks for spending a part of your day with me. This is Renovate Ed for Lenders.